the Storm Tracker podcast.
All right, it is the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin. I am here with Conor O'Neil. He is representing for Devils Illustrated, the Duke rival site. Of course, we are previewing the Miami versus Duke game at high noon on Saturday. So just kind of wanted to get Connor's take on the game and some matchups here going into it. Miami travels to Cameron Indoor to try to get a win. And Miami's actually an underdog, although they are ranked 17th in the nation. And surprisingly, Duke isn't. Usually it's the other way around. Usually Duke is ranked, and we're going in there trying to pull off the upset. So, just first and foremost, why do you think the odds makers have Duke favored in this game by 5 points, although they are unranked?
Man, if I had the answer to that, I guess I'd probably make a little more money on the gambling sites.
Right.
No, I think it's matchups. I think Duke's length gives them a little bit of an advantage in being able to slow Miami down in some ways that other teams haven't. When you look at, I'm as big of a fan of Isaiah Wong as there is, but he goes 6'4". Nigel Pack is 6 foot. Wooga Poplar 6'5". When you look at Duke, Tyrese Proctor has started the last few games at point guard. He's 6'5". They have Dariq Whitehead at 6'7". They play 2 7-footers. Kyle Filipowski starts, and Derek Lively's been coming off the bench lately at the 5 position. So I think size plays a factor. I also think just Duke is undefeated at Cameron this year. They've been a little bit of a different team at Cameron than they've been. I think they're up to 4 ACC road games so far, and they're 1-3 in those. And then the neutral site games, Duke played a couple neutral site games well, but also lost a couple on the neutral. So Cameron's been an advantage this season, and that's kind of different from last year. Last year was my first year on the beat. It was kind of weird stepping into Coach K's last season and my first. There was an immense amount of pressure on that team to win at home last year. Like it was the 2021 season, no fans were allowed in the building, period. Like no media was even allowed in the building. So Last year was this great rejoicing atmosphere. It was, let's celebrate Coach K. And that team played a lot of their worst games at home. It almost felt like when they got away from the spotlight of Cameron, they played better. Like that was the one time they beat Carolina last year was over in Chapel Hill. Miami came in last year and handed Duke their first home loss and thoroughly outplayed Duke down the stretch of that game. That was a big learning lesson. So I think when you're looking at why Duke is favored, the size, the venue play pretty big factors.
Yeah, funny that you mentioned that Duke is undefeated at home. Miami also undefeated at home, so all of their losses for both teams on the road. So, and you touched a little bit about last year's game where Miami, it was kind of a statement game for Miami finally last season, kind of an up and down year during the regular season, and then they finally get this big win in front of the camera crazies. And now it's kind of flipped all of a sudden where Miami is, I guess a team that is kind of riding a high off of their wins this season, ranked for the first time in a while. And now they go into an environment where they haven't favored well on the road this season with losses to Georgia Tech and last week to NC State. But I think this is a game where Miami can really show that they can play well on the road as well as at home. But it's going to take a valiant effort, and I agree with you. I think that's the actual reason that they are favored by 5 points. And one of the key matchups in this game is going to be, well, from when I looked at it, I thought it was going to be Kyle Filipowski against Norchad Omir, and we were chatting right before we jumped on here, and you think it's going to be something different than what I thought. But Omir is definitely their presence on the inside. Who on the inside should Miami be really concerned with in this game?
Yeah, it'll be Flip on the inside. It just won't be at the 5 position. Duke is, it's a little irresponsible to call Filipowski an inside player because he's a stretch 4. He goes inside, he rebounds the hell out of the ball. I think he's got to be top 5 in the ACC in rebounding. Just put up 28 and 15 last week against Pitt. And I think I had another double-double at Clemson. But he plays the 4. He has not played the 5 much at all this year. It's something that Duke fans have kind of been openly campaigning for. And I think John Shire's just too reticent to play him at the 5 because you don't get enough rim protection. He's a little too easy to move off the spot for being a 7-footer. He has blocked shots, but I would not call him a shot blocker. I think his shot blocks all come just because of height, not because of, that innate sense of timing that every good shot blocker has. Duke had a great one last year with Mark Williams. Derek Lively has that ability. He just fouls way too much inside, and that's one of the reasons he's been so disappointing. He's Rivals had him at 3. Everybody loves to call him the number 1 recruit in the country, and they're using the ESPN ranks when they do that. I like to protect the network when I can on that.
Right.
But one of the reasons why Derek Lively struggled this year is because he fouls inside. I mean, his arm, no matter how many times it seems like they tell him to stay straight up, those arms always wind up coming down. When he's in there, he's a defensive presence. And when he's under control and not swatting at the ball, he is a fantastic defensive 5-man. He is exactly what Duke needs. Like I said, he can't stay on the court, and his offensive game is kind of in shambles at this point. Ryan Young is the other 5. He's a transfer from Northwestern. He's kind of a bring your lunch pail type of player. He's admitted to, he is a below the rim center. Like, I'm sure he can get up and dunk. He's 6'9", but he's a lot more crafty. He uses pivots, ball fakes, all the good stuff that, it's kind of the overused cliche, the old man YMCA game that
yeah.
thrown around with his game a lot, but it's for good reason. Like, he's crafty down there. He's not going to explode past you. He's just going to finesse his way to the rim, and then all of a sudden he's got a layup. Those are the 2 5s. Those are the ones that would be matched up against Omir. And they'll have Filipowski out on a Jordan Miller or somebody that has the ball on the perimeter. Filipowski's actually decent defensively on the perimeter.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is he really a good defender at 7 foot tall to just really guard fast, more backcourt players like Isaiah Wong or Jordan Miller. And then when you were describing Lively, it sounded like you were describing Omir, to be honest, because he often gets into foul trouble as well. But he's been better at it. Let's just say that in these past few games. But that is a big concern when he is in foul trouble, because Miami's such a small team. And he's small himself. It's not like he's the tallest guy in the world to be an inside player, but he's a presence, and he is definitely their most valuable player when it comes to defense, when it comes to rebounding, and when it comes to energy overall. So that'll be an interesting matchup to watch to see who stays out of foul trouble in this game. Also, something to watch is or something to know rather is if Jeremy Roach is going to play. Just kind of wanted to get some insight from you as to do you think the player that averages 11.9 points per game, 3.2 assists, is going to play in this game? He missed the last couple.
I think it's 50-50. And that's a little bit of a cop out because that's what I was told earlier in the week. And I've not gotten any new information to move me off of that. We talked to John Shire this afternoon, and it was before their practice today. And John was hopeful that he was going to be able to get out there and do some things. He mentioned he hadn't been doing much. And it's 3 games that he's missed. It's about 2 weeks of just resting. He's dealing with a big toe injury on his right foot. And it was originally suffered back in late November in a loss to Purdue at the PK 85 out in Oregon. And he played through the game that he injured it. He played in the next 3 games and played really well. Sat out a game right before Duke went on the first of 2 long December breaks. He came back and played pretty poorly at Wake Forest in their first road game, which they lost. But the whole team played pretty poorly, so you didn't really think it was any kind of lingering issue with his toe. And then when they came back from that second long December break, he had 3 games that he was just awful. You could tell it was bothering him in the Florida State game, which was the middle of those 3 games. He aggravated it, and then he played at NC State, and that was Duke's worst game of the year. They lost by 24, were never in the game. I think NC State scored the first 18 or 14 points, something like that. So after the NC State game, it was just basically like, we've got to shut him down. We've got to give him time to heal where he's not, on the sideline, then trying to play in a game and then rinse, repeat that process. He just needed time. They've tried to give it to him. But it's going to depend on what they saw from him in practice today. And it's going to depend on what he does in pregame shoot around. So I think we'll get word. I don't think it'll be like hey, the refs are walking out with the ball and they're about to tip, and all of a sudden Jeremy Roach tears off his warm-up shorts and that's the game time decision. Like, game time decision always cracks me up because it's not like it's going to be 11:58 a.m. and John Shire just decides, all right, Jeremy, you're playing. Go check in.
Right.
So
which definitely could happen.
Yeah, I think the decision will get made sometime after pregame shoot around. That'll be 9 or 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Maybe a little earlier than that even. But yeah, Duke needs him back, but they need the version of Jeremy back. Not the one that was played in the most recent 3 games he's played in. If they get that version back, it's not even really a benefit at this point. Tyrese Proctor can give you those minutes. Jalen Blakes can give you those minutes. They need the Jeremy Roach from the first 12 to 15 games of the year. That's the one that really makes a difference for this team.
Yeah, that version of Jeremy Roach makes this Duke team a very formidable opponent. But I do want to ask you, Connor, how have they really fared without him? And who are some of the guys that kind of stepped up in his absence?
Well, Tyrese Proctor is the freshman point guard. He early enrolled after Trevor Keels stayed in the NBA draft because they flat out needed another ball handler. And once it gets to June 2nd, it's not like you can go recruit some late guy in the portal or even a class of 22 guy. So they got Tyrese Proctor to early enroll. He's been good, especially for the role that he was thrust into. He came into the season thinking he was going to play off-ball guard, learn from Jeremy. Now he's thrust into, okay, be our point guard. Be the point guard of Duke basketball. That's a big spot. He knew it was a possibility. Jeremy Roach is the only point guard. It's not like he had 4 other guys go down to put him in this position. But it's one thing to be ready for it. It's another thing to actually be thrust into it. He's been good at times. His best game of the last 3 was the win against Pitt. That's a really good Pitt team. They have experienced guards. He had 14 points, 5 assists, no turnovers. He made a late runner when Duke really needed it with about a minute left. There was a really clutch bucket to hit. He had a couple flashes against Clemson. Like he had 2 threes and a 3-point play there at the end of the first half when it looked like Duke was in control of the game. And it just wasn't sustained. Clemson is really good, and that game was on the road. And Duke is, for as long as Duke is going to live in the one and done era and be putting together teams of 7 to 12 newcomers a year, they're always going to have to figure out what it takes to win road games in the ACC in December and January. And that's kind of that wasn't up to the level that they needed to be at Clemson. And I think Tyrese would tell you he wasn't up to the level that Duke needed him to be to win that game.
I think that's actually the advantage that Miami has. They've got some veteran guys that have been here before. I mean, Jordan Miller is a guy that was on that team as well as Isaiah Wong that beat Duke last season. And so they've been in big time games and they've had to make big time shots and big time stops in games. And I think they know exactly what it takes to really kind of get those kind of wins. So I'm going to roll into like keys to the game that for Miami, and then you can kind of give me your take on keys for Duke to win the game. We kind of alluded to it earlier. I mean, Norchad or Mir has to stay out of foul trouble. I mean, he has to stay on the court in order for Miami to be successful. I mean, he is by far the leading rebounder on the team, gives you that defensive presence, and he energizes the team, like I said. So as long as he stays out of foul trouble, then they can be effective. If he gets into foul trouble like they did against Georgia Tech, then it's going to be a long afternoon for the Hurricanes. Also, Isaiah Wong, who didn't really play well in the last game against Syracuse, needs to get going. In a game like this, and it's on the road, and you need a bucket from your guy when the shot clock is going down. You need a bucket from your guy, Isaiah Wong. He needs to get going often and early in this game for Miami to have a chance. And I think Nigel Pack has to also shoot well as well. The thing about Miami is that they have a very high ceiling. Like this team can score upwards to 100 points on any given night, but they're kind of a live and die by the shot team. If they or make or miss team, you could say. If they're not making their shots, then they're going to struggle because they're not a great rebounding team. Now, offensively, they can get some boards with Jordan Miller, who seems to be a magnet when it comes to offensive rebounds, and like I said before, O'Meara is your presence inside defensively, getting boards. But if they can get hot and get rolling, then I can see Miami not only covering the spread. I think you take the points, but they may actually win outright because, like I said before, they're an experienced team, and they've come back several times this season as well, where they've been down double-digit points. Even in the last game against Syracuse, they were able to kind of battle against adversity and pull out a win. So that's why I like Miami to at least cover. If Roach plays and he plays to the level, like you said, he could play like earlier in the season, then Duke may pull out a victory at home.
Yeah, the one that I wanted to hit on was Isaiah Wong in a bounce back game. I looked up the research for my preview, and to me, he's basically had 4 bad games this year. He had 5 points on 1 for 7 against Florida A&M. And then the next game, he had 18, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals against Providence, a really good Providence team. He had 8 points on 3 for 10 against UCF and came back with 16 points, 3 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals against a Rutgers team that if they're not in the top 25, I think they should be. I think Rutgers is really good. He had 10 points against Louisville and came back with 36 on 11 for 17 against Cornell.
Yeah.
And had 6 points and 1 for 11 against Georgia Tech and 22 on 7 for 9 in the next game against BC. So,
yeah,
like I said, like there might not be a bigger Isaiah Wong fan among ACC media than me. I've been singing the guy's praises for 3 years now. He's my preseason ACC pick for Player of the Year. I think you can pretty much bank on him having about 20 points tomorrow. I just think he's that good of a player, and he's not going to stay down for long. I think Duke has to do everything they can to make sure that Nigel Pack doesn't get off. Watching Monday night's game, he's hitting threes from the logo against the Syracuse zone. Yeah. You can't let him do that at Cameron. And that's there was a little bit of Charlie Moore, and that's what he did last year in Miami's game at Duke. Like, he was a little shot maker, and Duke couldn't get him under control for a large portion of that game. So it'll be interesting. I do think this game gets determined by the backcourts and wings. Like, I think you could see both sides front courts putting each other in foul trouble. If that winds up being the case, I mean, Kyle Filipowski could have a monster game. It's kind of a last man standing in there, but yeah, I think this game gets determined by if Jeremy Roach plays, how healthy is he? How good can Tyrese Proctor be, whether Roach plays or not? And then what can Duke's wings, Dariq Whitehead, what can he do against Miami? What can he do to slow down Isaiah Wong? Against Wong, it'll either be Dariq Whitehead or Mark Mitchell. 167, 168. They're both really, really long and athletic. They should be able to stay with him, but like I said, I think there's only so much you can do against a player of that caliber.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Duke is 27th ranked on KenPom. Do you follow KenPom?
Religiously.
Yeah, me too. 27th on KenPom, while Miami is 42nd. So, hey, if that tells you anything, then Duke's gonna walk away with the victory. But that's why you play the games, right? So we'll see what happens. Connor, I really appreciate you coming on with me tonight. We'll see what happens between the Hurricanes and the Blue Devils at noon on Saturday.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Marcus.
All right. Thanks. Take care.